Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight, pump prices of petroleum products increase by an average of 10% as marketers adjust pump prices of products. Federal government explains increase in petrol pump price, says sector is fully deregulated. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announces third phase of ease of lockdown, names international airlines resuming flights. And rescuers in Beirut search through rubble of building amid reports that one person could be alive nearly 1 month after a massive blast in the city. Plus business, sports, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Central Bank approves emergency importation of more than 260,000 tons of maize to complement a likely shortfall of the commodity in the country.
On sports news tonight, the English FA announces its men's and women's national teams will receive equal pay and prize money.
There is a new price regime for premium motor spirits, also known as petrol, in the country, with the commodity now selling at 151 naira 56 kobo per litre from the initial 148 naira. New with this, Nigerians will now have to pay an average of 10% more on the commodity, which is not only used for transportation, but also used to power alternative sources of electricity, that is, generators. Of major concern is the fact that the change in price is coming at a time citizens have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and when unemployment rate is at its highest, 27.1%, and businesses are shutting down and furloughing workers. Tonight we begin the news at 10 on that note. But the federal government has been explaining the rationale behind the hike in the price of petrol. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, explains that the nation has gone into full deregulation and market forces now determine the price of the product. According to him, it will be difficult for Nigerians at the initial stage, but it will get better in the long run.
Against the background that this country can not at this time continue to afford this subsidy. It's spending over a trillion on subsidy every year. We decided that it was time to deregulate. What that meant was that government stood back from the business of importing and supplying product at the pump. We are no longer fixing prices. That is what deregulation means. We are no longer in the business of fixing those prices. We have stepped back and we are allowing market forces to determine the price at the pump. If you noticed, when the crude oil price went down earlier in the year, it reflected at the pump. And today, if crude oil prices go down, it will reflect at the pump. But when crude oil prices go up, then it will also reflect at the pump.
Explanation or not, the new petrol price hike is already generating mixed reactions from consumers, particularly in Lagos, as many filling stations have immediately adjusted their meters to the new pump price. Many of them are groaning over the hardship resulting from the decision.
The influx of motorists at a filling station on Lagos mainland does not change from what was obtainable before the increase in petrol pump price. The price here is 162 naira per litre, an upward difference of 11 naira which is a reflection of an increase in the ex-depot price of 151 naira 56 kobo announced by the Pipelines and Product Marketing Company PPMC. This reality does not go down well with motorists.
A lot of Nigerians are going through terrible time at this time. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Those who are working, they have pay cuts. A lot of businesses are struggling to survive. And to think that the government will visit us with an increase in fuel price, not to talk of that, there's also an increase in PHN tariff. This is not just the time. It is so wrong.
From mainland Lagos to Lagos Island, prices at the pump vary depending on the marketer. For instance, a litre of petrol is dispensed at a cost of between 159 and 162 naira in places visited, including the NNPC retail outlet in Ikoyi. Unlike the previous reactions, this consumer is neither surprised nor disturbed by the new price.
I'd rather not go back to the days of 2012, 2014 that all of us will be lining out here with kegs and be buying at 600 naira per litre. I'd rather not go there. We had our money then, we couldn't get the products to buy.
The same thought is shared by the Lagos State Chairman of the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers.
As long as we are importing the refined products and we have deregulated the sector, we will find ourselves. In fact, this will not be the end of it.
The Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency had earlier in the year removed the PMS price cap and introduced the implementation of a market-based pricing regime, essentially signaling the beginning of a deregulated downstream petroleum sector.
Apart from the hike in the price of petrol, electricity unions and consumers have continued to condemn the new electricity tariff hike imposed by electricity distribution companies. They say the increment is a disregard for the challenges faced by Nigerians, and it is also ill-timed. But electricity companies are insisting there is no perfect timing for the tariff to take effect, as the current pricing system continues to impede investment in the sector. Our correspondent, Edo reports.
The Nigerian power sector has been through phases. Despite the investment and reforms, the sector has produced recurring dismal performance, with electricity consumers constantly groaning over poor power supply. Recently, President Muhammadu Buhari ordered a mass metering program for consumers, and that has not even taken off. A new tariff regime is announced. This goes to maintain a 4 naira tariff for all customers consuming less than 50 kilowatts hour of energy per month. For most discos, there is a tariff freeze for those who don't enjoy up to 12 hours of power supply daily. But for the upper band, the tariff rose to as high as 56 naira from 40 naira. Raf, a trader who lives at Okera area of Lagos, says his neighborhood has been in constant battle with the electricity distribution company over estimated billing, and now with the new tariff, it sees a rip-off.
We had a consensus so that they should, give us meter, bill, card meter or meter card. So we did that meeting among ourselves with the landlord, and everybody were arrived at the conclusion that if not card meter, no billing. We won't pay, even if they give us, because they keep on bringing crazy bills every now and then. So they find out that if they distribute this meter, they are the one to lose.
To get supply.
Ralph's story is not different from this self-employed Lagos resident who is also not metered.
It will be good for the tariff, to be revised to, to present realities. It will be good, yeah, that's on the one hand. Whereas on the other hand, we have a case where a lot of consumers have not been metered. And even with the present lower tariff, a lot of consumers cannot even afford the outrageous estimated bills. They haven't been following the capping order initially. Who's to say they are going to follow this capping order now, when NEC has not demonstrated initially that they are able to put these discos, in check?
The discos admit that the metering is tied to the tariff, but the capping method is expected to ensure that consumers are not cheated.
Metering investments are tied to tariffs. The investments will only happen if the tariffs are right. Now that the tariffs are right, the investments will come in. There is now a ceiling because those who were not being metered were being estimated. There is now a cap on estimated billings. There is a methodology to protect them. They may even come out better off than if they had meters.
The discourse insists that the current pricing system is not only unsustainable, but also not investor-friendly, and that necessitated this journey to a contract-based market, a move already condemned by some customers. Dari Edo, Channels Television News.
And back to the petroleum price hike, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has added his voice to the debate on the hike in electricity tariff and the new petrol pump price, describing both increases as ill-timed and ill-advised. The former Vice President, who expresses his views through his Twitter handle today, says the increment is a disregard for the challenges faced by Nigerians. His tweet reads in part, "I reject the increased electricity tariffs coming out of the lockdown. Nigerians need a stimulus, not an impetus disregard for the challenges that they face." He says instead of an increase in electricity tariff, the former Vice President says Nigerians deserve a stimulus. But let's take a look at the situation in other parts of Nigeria, that is with the increase in pump price of petrol. Nigerians greeting the change with the price of petrol at filling stations today for residents in Abuja and in other states. Change is coming at a time they least expect.
Less than 24 hours after a PPMC Ibadan depot internal memo advising on a new ex-depot price of 151 naira 56 kobo for premium motor spirit hit the headlines, the ripple effects are already all over the streets across the country. At the nation's capital, the pill is rather too bitter to swallow, as captured from the reactions of the first callers at the petrol stations. From 148 naira some hours ago, meters have been adjusted to 161 naira per litre in Kaduna State. Most of the filling stations has also followed, further laying to rest any doubts as to how market fundamentals move very fast.
It's unbearable. The situation is terrible.
In Niger State, the new price is already biting deep into the pockets of consumers who lamented the price difference. This situation perhaps has prompted the DPR warning against sharp practices and arbitrary changes. There's a bit of a cheering news in Abia State. While the adjustment has been made to the pump price, transportation fare has not been increased. But the buyers are not happy either way with the new rate of 164 naira to the litre.
I cannot even fathom it. As you wake up one morning and there's increase. Yeah, I just bought 164 naira per litre.
Will the prices ever go down seem to be the question burning the minds of consumers. Unfortunately, this is not likely in the immediate. And here are some explanations. Fundamentally, fuel pump price will now be a reflection of market realities like crude oil price, dollar rates, summer and winter periods, freights, landing costs, and many more. Finding a lower margin of sales will be a function of efficiency, low crude production cost, which is being pursued vigorously by the GMD and MPC, in-country refining capacity, fighting pipeline thieves and vandals, among other factors. Or Nigeria may have to completely switch to gas. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
We'll have more perspectives on the new petrol and electricity price hike later when we take the views of a member of the President's Economic Advisory Council, Mr. Bismarck Rewani. But in part two, after the break, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announces third phase of ease of lockdown. Plus, I've been joined by the CEO, as we said, of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rewani, for some perspective on the electricity and fuel price hikes. Stay with us. Well, Welcome back. If you just joined us to watch the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Pump price of petrol products increased by an average of 10% as marketers adjust the pump price of the products. Federal government explains the increase in petrol pump price, says sector is fully deregulated. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announces third phase of ease of lockdown, names international airlines resuming flights. And rescuers in Beirut search through rubble of building amid reports of one person could be alive nearly 1 month after massive blast in the city. Plus business, sports, and later from our studios in London. Well, you get the Channels TV or Channels 24 apps. You can catch up with news updates on the go, plus the Eyewitness feature designed for you to share pictures, videos, and news of happenings around you. Install the apps, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. Let's get some insight on our lead stories tonight. The new price hike in petrol and the electricity tariff that's been increased in the country. Earlier, I spoke with a member of the President's Economic Advisory Committee and Chief Executive of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rawani. Started by asking him how he would describe these two increments coming about the same time amidst an inflation.
This is crunch time for Nigerians. One, you are dealing with a 75% average increase in the price of electricity, and you are dealing with a 10% increase in the price of petroleum products, refined petroleum products. And that is the truth. It has an impact on government, it has an impact on consumers, it has an impact on investments. But generally speaking, it is bringing alignment to the level of alignment to resource allocation in Nigeria. And more important is the fact that subsidies, which are reverse taxes, are being reduced so that the people will now have, the government will have more revenue to provide services to the people. And I've said the condition is that as long as the government revenues are used for providing services and leakages are reduced, then everybody should be better off for this right now.
Could you also talk more about that, as well as the impact on the manufacturer and the consumer?
The government gets money from about 5 different sources. The most important being petroleum profit tax, followed by corporate income taxes, followed by what you call VAT, followed by custom and import custom duties, and finally you get other revenues rates and the dividends they get from their investments. What does the government spend the money on? It spends it on personnel costs, overheads, debt service, and subsidies, also providing services to the people. Now, what this does, if you reduce the subsidies, you have actually increased the revenue. Now, what does this mean? It means that the government, theoretically, and if they are working efficiently, should be able to increase and improve the services it gives to people. The government is about a service to the people. And the government had delayed making this decision because they wanted to minimize the shocks to the ordinary man and the poverty level. But let me go back a little bit and tell you that apart from anything else, this country has an inflation map which shows you that inflation is very high in certain parts of the country. Basically, we are talking about Sokoto, Maiduguri, Akwa Ibom, and is moderate in places like Abuja and Lagos. So you have high inflation, multidimensional poverty, and you also have poor quality service of government. Now, the government argument before was that we have no money and we have low productivity. Now that the money problem is being solved, the government has only one argument, that is productivity. And that is why you see things like the Oronsai report and others to overhaul the structure of government. Theoretically speaking, this is a good day for government. Now, what should the people expect to get? If you are a manufacturer, now that you've deregulated the price of power and petroleum products, those in the downstream and some in the upstream will feel good. Those who are providing electricity, the discos, will feel good. And then they will be able to invest in transformers, meters, and all. And therefore, one thing you have to understand is that in an average household, like in Ikoyi and Victoria Island, office or household, we did the analysis which says that 25,000 naira is spent a day if you are using a 100 kVA generator. While if you on public power, you spend only 8,000 naira a day. Therefore, it is still in your best interest to have steady power from public sector, from the public power, which is 8,000 naira, than pay 25,000 naira for diesel alone, not to talk of depreciation on the generator. So for the manufacturer and investor, this is good. For the consumer, that is where the problem is. The consumer, like I said earlier, you'll find that the consumer, we looked at 7 key products. And in the last 2 years, the average increase in price for all the 7 key products was 64%. Then the highest of that being Gari, which has gone from 7,500 to 15,000, 100%. And then the lowest being flour, which has gone from 8,500 to 13,000. Now, what does it mean? It means that in spite of high inflation, lower income, but this and transport fares have actually gone up. And luckily, that's why I'm not at your studio today. At least I'm trying to save some money instead of paying 160 naira a liter to come all the way to Judiciary to come for this program. So that's one of the beauty and one of the good sides of technology. So generally speaking, and now the consumer is going to be under a lot of pressure. But like I said at the beginning, when the going gets tough, the tough people get going. The outlook for the next quarter as follows. Inflation will rise a little bit before moderating. 2, the squeezed disposable income of the consumer is going to be squeezed a little bit more, but there will be relative power, stable power. So the traders, the artisans, and all the people that use power will be better off. There will be new investments in power, petroleum, and manufacturing, which will give a multiplier effect to output and GDP and make people better off. Forex sales will resume. The central bank is doing everything in its power to converge and unify the exchange rate so that if we do that, we believe that the exchange rate will actually appreciate, and you can see signs of that already. And finally, and most important, is the fact that the economy will begin to reopen post-COVID. But like I said, there is a silver lining at the end of this cloud, and that, again, like I said at the beginning, like John F. Kennedy says, when the going gets tough, the tough people get going, and that's what it is today.
Well, thankfully, there is something to look forward to, especially for the consumer. Thank you again, Mr. Iwane, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has announced the country's 3rd phase of eased lockdown, with some modifications to the safety protocols to allow further reopening of the economy. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, notes that the 3rd phase of eased lockdown will last until the virus is sufficiently brought under control. That formed part of the decision at the bi-weekly news conference of the PTF held at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja today.
This is not the usual venue for the briefing of the task force, but the choice of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport for the day's briefing is informed by the planned reopening of the airspace for international flights on September the 5th. Before the briefing starts, members take a tour of facilities in place for the planned reopening. Back to the hall, the task force chairman announces the 3rd phase of the eased lockdown.
Mr. President has considered and approved the following. 1, transition to the 3rd phase of the national response to COVID-19 for a period of 4 weeks with effect from tonight. Mr. President has similarly considered and has therefore extended the lifespan of the Presidential Task Force until the end of December 2020.
The aviation minister also speaks about the reopening of the airspace for international flights.
Virgin Atlantic.
But not all airlines are allowed to operate as the airports open for international flights as shown in this table.
Before we go into the procedure and what has changed, I will quickly go through the airlines and the timetable. Beginning on Saturday, for Lagos, there will be BA, Delta, Emirates, Qatar, AWA, Kenyan Airways, and Middle East Airlines. For Abuja, there will be BA, Egypt Air, Emirates, Ethiopian Airlines, AWA, Middle East Airlines, and Turkish.
Meanwhile, the national coordinator also highlights some of the modifications to the safety protocols, advising states considering reopening of schools to do so in phases.
We are modifying the curfew to commence from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. nationwide, effective from 12:01 hours tonight. For educational institutions, which includes daycare, primary, secondary, and tertiary care, we strongly recommend that states conduct risk assessment, and if there will be opening of schools, it must be staged and preferably carried out in phases to ensure that this does not pose a risk to the general public.
Nigeria's current case fatality ratio stands at 1.9%, having recorded over 1,027 deaths from the over 54,000 confirmed cases reported so far.
In some countries, it's been...
When the News at 10 returns, the central bank approves emergency importation of more than 260,000 tons of maize to complement shortfall in the country. We'll have that and more in Business News. Join us again. Welcome back. Let's turn our attention now to politics. The All Progressives Congress has commenced its ward-to-ward governorship campaign rally in Edo's Central Senatorial District, with the party's governorship candidate, Pastor Osage Ize-Iyamu, assuring the people of his commitment to the development of the area. Speaking at the rallies, which held in Urekpen, Ekpoma, and Irua in Isan West and Essen Central local government areas of the state, the former national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Adams Oshomole, called on people to punish Governor Obaseki with their votes for neglecting the area over the past 4 years.
Iruekpe in Esan West local government area is the first port of call for the APC leaders and the party's governorship candidate, Pastor Osage Ize-Iyamu, as they begin ward-to-ward campaigns in Edo Central Senatorial District. The APC governorship candidate wastes no time in taking to the stage to tell the people why he is the better man for the #1 job in the state.
A vote for Obaseki or PDP is a continuity of suffering, continuity of neglect, continuity of darkness, continuity of poverty. You know what that kind of thing? But let me assure you, APC, Pastor Ize-Iyamu, we have a simple agenda. We took it from the manifesto of the APC. We copied it from the good work of the Oshomole. X will provide security. We will invest in it. Whether na vigilante or na police, we will invest in it. And na infrastructure. Iraq may need more roads. Na lie? What the problems are.
While the former APC national chairman, Adams Oshomole, attests to Pastor Ize-Iyamu's ability to deliver on his promises to Edo people.
As I talk for Obaseki, be like say I wrote the exam for him. So the man where you go, not be brain. But when you listen to simple agenda, naive pastor think from his brain. He has lived all his life in Edo State. He has met many people across the 18 local government, across the 192 ward. He knows what the problems are. So he wrote out his own solutions in black and white. Because who know what do something, you know go put that down.
Political leaders from the area insist that the APC stand a better chance to win the election in the area.
I can tell you the campaign is moving very well and the people are with us. And I assure you that come September this month, this election will be won by Osage Ize-Iyamu.
as the countdown to the Edo governorship election continues. The All Progressives Congress says it's relying on the mandate of these voters and others it's yet to reach to secure victory in the polls.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party says the opposition is planning for a postponement of the September 19 governorship election in Edo State by perpetrating violence which would inevitably force the INEC to shift the polls. The PDP governorship candidate, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, made this claim during the PDP campaign rallies in Ikpobaoha local government area, insisting that the opposition has nothing on the ground to show for in its own campaigns.
A capacity crowd inside Ikpobaoha Mini Stadium sets the stage for the PDP campaign tour of Ikpobaoha local government area. For the PDP campaign team, this is the largest turnout so far for the Obaseki Shaibu re-election bid. A clear indication that the PDP holds sway in the area.
Bring you greetings.
The campaign council boss, Mr. Dan Obi, adds that Governor Obaseki's achievements in office speak volumes about his credentials for an extension of his tenure.
He has built roads. In this local government, he has even built a power plant. In this local government, he is also building a modular refinery. He has done so much. He has done so much that those who are opposed to him are enemies of Edo State.
For the PDP governorship candidate, the business of governing a state is no mean feat. He believes that the simple agenda manifesto of the opposition shows they are not equipped for such responsibilities. Mr. Obaseki says the only way out for them is to look for a postponement of the governorship election.
I want to appeal to you that even when they come out with their lions and tigers to do the things they were planning to do not retaliate force with force. Please, I am begging you. They say they want an inconclusive election so that the election can be postponed. INEC will say we could not conduct elections in Edo because of violence. So let us postpone the election. That way, they will now try and hold the election after November 12th. That is their plan.
The PDP campaign team is not about to drop the ball. The rallies turn into road shows, getting more people involved as the clock ticks towards September 19 for the Edo governorship election.
We're in Niger State now, where the police has confirmed the killing of 11 persons in Wednesday's attack on a bank and other houses at Kagara community in Rafi local government area of the state. The State Commissioner for Police, Adamu Usman, gave the confirmation shortly after visiting the area. He said 6 of the attackers were killed by policemen during the incident. Mr. Usman, however, revealed that a policeman, a private security guard, a local vigilante, and 1 resident were shot dead by the gunmen, while a boy died from shock. The state's governor, Abubakar Bello, has appealed to residents of Kagara to remain calm, assuring that government is deploying resources at its disposal to ensure the protection of their lives and property. The governor, in a statement, says no responsible government will fold its arms and allow law-abiding innocent citizens to be wasted. He acknowledges the enormity of the security challenges facing the state, but assures the people that the state, in active collaboration with President Muhammadu Buhari and the security agencies, remain undaunted in its war against terror. In the meantime, the Rivers State government is getting its feet wet as it officially hands over 20 fully furnished residential quarters to members of the Judiciary. According to the state governor, Nyesom Wike, the provision of the quarters will help curb the rate at which judges are evicted from their homes after years of service.
20 fully furnished 4-bedroom quarters for judges of the Rivers State Judiciary ready to be handed over by the government. A premier project that is aimed at ensuring judges in the state get a decent place to stay after retirement.
A judiciary which has been provided with lifelong accommodation requires very little more to perform optimally. So what His Excellency, the Governor of Rivers State, has done is a life uplifting project. And it only comes out from somebody who thinks of life as a gift from God.
The greatest problem or challenge besetting a judicial officer in Nigeria is the unavailability of a comfortable and befitting residence after retirement. This project demonstrates the very strong commitment of His Excellency in the infrastructural development of the Rivers State Judiciary and of the federal judiciaries who are of Rivers State origin.
As I invite His Excellency,
the Rivers State Governor, Nyesom Wike, says the handing over of the quarters is in fulfillment of his promise to provide accommodation for judges.
The state now bears full responsibility to providing befitting accommodation for all judicial officers of Rivers State origin beyond their service years for life. The policies implemented in either of two ways. Judges have a choice to receive a purpose-built house from the state government or opt for cash payment to build or buy their houses by themselves.
The quarters are handed over to the judges on an owner-occupier basis as they are presented their certificates of occupancy. The judges' quarters is named after Chinwe Aguma, a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in the state.
In Oyo State, the government has flagged off Phase 2 of the Light of Oyo State project, which commenced last September in Ogbomosho Town, Oyo State. Flagging off the project, the state governor, Seyi Makinde, says about 224 kilometers of road has been targeted to be well lit under the project.
We cannot overemphasize the importance of street lights to our state security and also our economy. Even the Bible says that darkness and light cannot exist together. So the areas covered will include selected roads across all the geopolitical zones of Oyo State, totaling 223.48 kilometers of street light.
This project, as previously elaborated, is about 224 kilometers of street lighting across Oyo State government, Oyo State. And when completed within 6 to 9 months, will not only provide illumination, it will also be the first of its kind to have connectivity, Wi-Fi connectivity incorporated into it, and CCTV camera for surveillance.
Although the COVID-19 pandemic may have stretched the health system to its limits, several corporate citizens have continued to support the fight against the disease, including providing access to quality health service. And that's what the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and Shell Nigeria Exploration Production Company is doing in Ogijo community and its environs in Ogun State.
The establishment of this 20-bed healthcare center located in the Ogijo community of Ogun State is the latest in a series of corporate social responsibility activities by SNEPCO and its partners. Guests gathered physically and virtually to witness the commissioning.
The global health challenge posed by the ravaging pandemic, the delivery of the Ogijo Medical Center could not have come at a better time. Therefore, this intervention by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and SNEPCO will to a large extent help to take off some non-COVID-19 related cases in the state hospitals.
The Ogun State government acknowledges the project as a significant contribution by the donors to the primary healthcare implementation plan of the state.
With the state-of-art primary healthcare center that you have delivered, I am sure that the people of Ogijo would then have the qualitative, affordable and accessible healthcare that His Excellency had promised all citizens of Ogun State.
After a formal presentation to the state government, the guests take a tour of the facility.
Over here we have the pediatric ward. We may not want to bore you without going into each of the rooms. Now take us to the maternity zone.
It's the first of its kind, if not in Ogun State, but at least in Shagamu. And it is long overdue, and it's something that the people of Ogijo are very appreciative of.
Other donations include laboratories, medical equipment, ambulances, and others to support an efficient and effective healthcare delivery process.
This is a static facility that will also carry out health extension services in and around Ogijo, with this as the fulcrum from where they're operating.
The donors, SNEPCO, and their partners, through their various social investment programs, commits to stimulating an improved quality of life for Nigerians, including access to quality healthcare services.
That takes us to business news now. Here's Teniola Shibawale.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Amarachi. Welcome to Business News. In efforts to counter a likely shortfall of maize in the country, the central bank has granted approval to 4 agro-processing companies to import 262,000 tons of the commodity. According to a statement released today by the Nigeria Customs Service, the 4 approved companies are Premier Feeds Mills, which is expected to import 120,000 tons, Chief Farms Limited, 60,000 tons, Crown Flour Mills, 22,000 tons, and Wakut Limited, which will be importing 30,000 tons of the commodity. The statement further explains that the companies will only be allowed to import the commodities within 4 months, starting from August to October this year. On July the 14th, the CBN announced the restriction of forex for maize import in its effort to encourage local production of the commodity. The Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Mr. Clem Agba, has announced steps taken by the federal government to achieve the creation of 100 million jobs it promised Nigerians last year. The steps, according to the minister, includes the adoption of the Medium-Term National Development Plan 2021 to 2030. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, Mr. Agba explains that through synergy between the government and the private sector, the roadmap will deliver better results for the country's socio-economic development. The stock market maintains positive trend for a 3rd consecutive session in the new month, but this time on the support of some key banking sector components. Temple Ashaju has details of today's trading on the NSE.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Report. The stock market remains resilient with earnings declarations from Tier 1 banks and some portfolio rebalancing in the insurance segment. The benchmark index inched up by 20 basis points, earning investors a total of 26.62 billion naira worth of gains in equity capitalization. But what's the big story for today? Zenith Bank's half-year earnings came in handy with proposed interim dividend of 30 kobo per share, totaling 9.4 billion naira and helping the lender to break the 17 naira price resistance level after several attempts. Home and personal care giant PZ PLC also announced September the 24th as the date for its extraordinary general meeting over the proposed sale of its subsidiary Nutrisima Limited to Friesland Campina Wamco Nigeria. Despite the possibility of some profit-taking actions in the next trading session, traders remain optimistic of a bullish September. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
Thanks a lot, Temple. Well, while major stock markets in Africa and Asia closed today's trading with mostly positive sentiments, US and European markets indexes ended in the red following sell-off on tech shares and global economic data. Here are some snapshots of the figures. And that's business news tonight. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. Nearly 1 month after a massive explosion tore through Lebanon's capital, Beirut, rescuers are searching through the rubble of a building amid reports a person could be alive. More than 200 people died when 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate in a port warehouse detonated back in August. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The name of an unarmed black man who died in New York State in the United States after he was hooded by police and held face down to the road for 2 minutes has been released.
Get on the ground, man. Look. Get on the ground. Put your hands behind your back. Behind your back. Yes, don't move. Yes. Don't move. Yes, chill out, man. Don't move, all right, man? Yes,
Daniel Prude was suffering from mental health issues when police restrained him in March and put what's known as a spit hood on his head. He later died of asphyxiation, but his story has only now been made public. Tensions have risen again in the US in recent weeks after the black man Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back and paralyzed during an arrest in Kenosha in Wisconsin on August the 23rd, sparking large protests in the city that turned violent. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called the suspected poisoning of Russian activist Alexei Navalny as outrageous. It comes as the German Chancellor announced he was poisoned with the nerve agent Novichok. Angela Merkel added that Russia must answer difficult questions relating to the attack against the most outspoken critic of Russia's President, Vladimir Putin. Germany is currently discussing how to react with its EU and NATO allies, while the Kremlin has rejected accusations that the Russian state was responsible. US President Donald Trump has suggested that people in the state of North Carolina should vote twice in the November election, although doing so is a crime. Mr. Trump suggested voters should vote once in person and a second time by post in order to stress test the system. The president has frequently made claims that postal votes are vulnerable to electoral fraud. Democrats have accused President Trump and the Republican Party of attempting to suppress the vote.
Let them send it in and let them go vote. And if their system's as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to.
Japan's Coast Guard have rescued 1 person after a search was launched for a cargo ship carrying livestock that went missing in the East China Sea. The as yet unnamed man was pulled from the sea after he was spotted adrift wearing a life jacket. The Gulf Livestock 1 departed from New Zealand on August the 14th with 43 crew members on board. The journey was expected to take about 17 days, but the ship sent a distress call close to southwestern Japan. France has announced it's planning to spend €100 billion to pull its economy out of a deep coronavirus-induced crisis. The stimulus equates to 4% of the gross domestic product, meaning France is ploughing more public cash into its economy than any other big European country compared to their GDP. Prime Minister Jean Castex explained the recovery plan aims to keep the French economy from collapsing and unemployment exploding. The United Nations says record flooding in Sudan has damaged infrastructure and contaminated crucial water supplies amid the coronavirus pandemic.
Roads have become too muddy for traffic to pass, making it extremely difficult or impossible to deliver humanitarian aid to some communities.
The UN has warned record floods in Sudan have devastated local infrastructure, cutting off humanitarian access. Dozens have died and thousands of homes have been destroyed after heavy rains triggered severe flooding and the rise of the River Nile by nearly 17.5 metres, the highest level in 100 years. The Mexican Navy has seized nearly 3 tons of cocaine and arrested 3 people in a dramatic drugs bust. This ship's erratic movements caught the attention of the surveillance patrols, and 3 suspects were arrested in the operation. The footage was released showing a helicopter intercepting a speedboat in the Mexican Caribbean that was allegedly loaded with 2.9 tons of cocaine. The Navy reported they found 74 packages of the drug. Prince Harry and his American wife Meghan have signed a multi-year contract with Netflix to produce different types of programs. The couple, who have moved to California with their son after stepping back from royal duties in the United Kingdom, will make documentaries, docu-series, feature films, scripted shows and children's programming. In a statement, they said their aim is to create content to inform and to give hope. And finally, 8 years ago, rising water levels in Kenya's Lake Nakuru drove away the clouds of pink-coloured flamingos that were the park's biggest draw. But now they're back. Rangers say their disappearance triggered a drop in visitor numbers at the Nakuru National Park, but now their return has rekindled hopes of a rebound in an area heavily reliant on tourism. And that's your international news around the world in 5. And now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
The Niger Football Federation has confirmed that 4 members of its staff have tested positive for COVID-19. This followed a medical test on all its staff members after a top management member of the federation tested positive for the virus. The NFF said the affected persons are in stable condition and are receiving treatment in full compliance with health protocols and advisories. The English Football Association has announced that the men and women's international teams are receiving equal pay. This comes after the Brazilian Football Confederation on Wednesday abolished pay disparity between its men's and women's national teams. The English FA revealed that it has been paying the men's and women's teams equally in terms of match fees and match bonuses since January. Atletico Madrid have confirmed that striker Diego Costa and fullback Santiago Arias have both tested positive for COVID-19. The Spanish La Liga giants claim that both players are asymptomatic and are both in good health, but are now entering a period of self-isolation and quarantine to limit the spread of the virus in line with health regulations. A German Bundesliga outfit RB Leipzig have become the first club to be given the go-ahead to allow fans into their stadium in time for their opening game of the 2020-21 season. The city's health authorities have agreed for RB Leipzig to allow up to 8,500 fans to enter the Red Bull Arena on September the 20th when they take on FSV Mainz 05. And that's a wrap on sports news.
Thanks, Harrison. And the main news again, the pump prices of petroleum products in the country increased today by an average of 10% as marketers adjusted prices of products. The federal government explained the increase, saying the sector is fully deregulated. Also today, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced the 3rd phase of ease of lockdown and also named the international airlines resuming flights. Plus, rescuers in Beirut today searched through the rubble of a building amid reports that one person could be alive nearly 1 month after a massive blast. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Obani. Good night.